Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel, Art Classes My Way. I have a lady who has brought me some jewelry. We have some costume jewelry and some nicer pieces that she has brought to me to be repaired. And I'm just going to go over at least these guys with you. There's a lot more involved in them rather than just restringing a kind of stretchy bracelet. So what we have here is a beautiful little piece with some opal and some real silver here. Now, when you guys are doing your own repairs and things like that, you really want to look over the whole piece. Now, this particular piece, this little wire, just the end of it, is loose. Now, it's just where, if you can see this little bit of get a good hold on it, you can just kind of see, get something to point with, how that'll work. We can just kind of see this little bit of white here, a little bit of shine right there at the end of that wire. That is where the solder that they used had stopped. So it didn't go all the way to the end of this teeny tiny little wire, and it was poking out. Now, as of right now, it does not look like that wire, and it might have been broken just a tiny bit. No, it's pretty even. Same things happen with this wire over here as well. So, since I don't have a solder station set up just yet, what I recommend is just pushing this guy back down, being very careful about it. This is real silver, and you can tell by the way it's tarnished here. And also it does have a number stamped on the back here, 125. So, it's probably sterling silver. If I had the equipment to polish it up, I didn't ask her if she'd even want to. I didn't even think that this would be sterling silver with the other piece that she had brought me, being costume jewelry, so I didn't even think about it. But it's a very lovely little opal there, don't you think? I love it. I love opals. And this had a little bit of a dent in the back. And let's take a look at where this guy, because he has stayed, the stone has stayed in here better. He doesn't have that divot in the back where you can see this guy. He did have a divot. And I just pushed it out with my round nose pliers. Now keep in mind, when you're messing with sterling silver, this stuff is soft. And it is easy to accidentally punch holes in. And I just went in here and just pushed it out a little bit. And as you can see from this piece, what it's supposed to look like. Now, this is obviously a bead, but there is nothing in there to indicate, and my camera wants to focus on the background there. There's nothing in there to indicate that there was ever anything other than glue holding this guy in. And there was glue on the outside, and I just was able to luckily just kind of flake it away with my fingernail, so that way we'll still have that nice little surface there. But there wasn't very much glue, and I'm thinking in order to re-glue it, I want it to kind of go down into that hole a little bit, so that way, although the problem is that the glue doesn't have a whole lot to hold on to. So this could potentially happen again, because there is nothing coming down through to permanently hold this guy in. Now, if it was me and I had made this little hoop on the top, the eye pin, what have you, I would have used an eye pin. I would have lassoed it through here, put it up through the cone, and then from there turned it into an eye pin. Now maybe that could have been what happened in the past when this was originally made. Maybe somebody else repaired this before I ever got a hold of it. But I also don't have any sterling wire to try to correct this piece. Now if you're wondering how this piece was made, pretty much somebody made the cone here. And boy, is that silver is thin. I can see a hole in the side here, and then I know there's that hole way up in the front, just where this stone is. And I have a feeling that the cone started out as a sheet, and then the seam is up through the front, and then, you know, you put all the decorative things on the front to hide your seam. And then this is just a little piece of wire that they soldered on to the end of the cone, which, there again, I personally would have ran it through to hold this guy in addition to doing the glue. There's nothing wrong with the fact that they use glue at all. It's just with something that is clearly somebody has the tools and somebody has the capabilities to do it, I would have done it that way instead. So, since I don't really want to ruin the design of what's already been made and put together, or even rebuild the whole thing, I'm only getting $5 for this. We'll just put it back in with glue, and we're going with the Jewelry Glue E6000. I've had a lot of luck with this. The only thing is a lot of people think that with this you should, oh, there it is. And oh, you know, give it a couple hours and it'll be fine. No. You want to give this stuff 48 hours to completely and fully cure. Otherwise, it's going to basically act like a rubbery kind of glue, like a rubber cement kind of a thing. You really want to wait for this stuff to cure. Don't rush it and give it the time that it needs. I'm just cleaning out the barrel of the dispenser. We've got some good glue in that, so I'll just go ahead and kind of wipe it on. And this is the client's mother's earrings. Let's see if we can, let's make that look a little nicer. I don't want it to potentially goop out too much, but I do also want to make sure that it's glued in nicely. Let's try that first. Okay. Now we got a little bit of seepage there. That's the great thing about the E6000 glue is before it's dried, you can wipe it away nicely. Now some of the glue managed to get underneath this frill here, which it wasn't before, but that makes me happy. I'd rather it be under that gives it more surface area to really get a good hold on too. So just wiping some of this off. And this stuff is water soluble till it dries anyway. All right, and that is a nice, easy repair. Again, I like the overall design. They are gorgeous, and to give you an idea of whoever made these, that they have some really good skills. Some of the hardest jewelry techniques to do, apparently. I've never gotten the chance to do them because my jewelry teacher never taught us how to do them. Whenever I'd ask her, oh, how do you do this? It looks so fine and delicate, and I really like it, and I don't know. Well, thanks. I think mostly she just didn't want to talk with me. But you see these little balls, these little beads here? That is just little balls of silver. And what you do is you just take pure silver and then you melt it down. I might want to put a weight on this just to make sure that everything stays nice and cohesive. Let's just pick up the other one actually. These are balls of silver and they've been melted into a ball. That's one difficult thing to do. It's not terribly difficult, but then afterwards what you do is now you got to take these little balls of silver, and silver has it does not take a lot of heat. It will melt first before a lot of the other metals. I can't remember if it has a high melting or a low melting point right off the top of my head at the moment. But basically the important thing to keep in mind is it takes a whole lot less heat to melt silver than it does any of the other metals. And that's why jewelry solder is typically a very high concentration of silver. I think there's tin in it, which also has a very low melting point, and by adding the tin or whatever other metal it is that they add in there, I do believe it's tin, that'll help lower the melting point even lower. That's why there's 3 grades of solder. There's hard, medium, and easy. Easy is going to have more tin in it, and less as it goes up. And what that basically does is, okay, so your first layer of solder, which for this piece was probably, this was probably the first solder. And since it would, because they would have had to put all the decorations around it. So by putting this bezel on here, it has a seam somewhere, and I'll bet you it's that right there. That was probably hard solder. Now, because there's tin mixed in with it, it has a little bit lower melting point than the silver that was used around it. And so they soldered that together, put the stone around. Well, stone would have been put in last. If that is a stone, that might not be, I'm not sure. while I like jewelry, I don't have the tools, and I was never taught how to do anything with the actual stones and precious stones and how to tell. But anyway, it could be just something that's put in there. It seems kind of odd that it would be so flush, but it's gorgeous anyway. And if it's a fake opal, and please, anybody tell me, if you know out there, my mom told me that it is bad luck if you are not born in December. It is bad luck for you to wear an opal. This is something she was told, and when I used to work in retail, I'd ask other people when they would, when they would be wearing opals, like, oh, you're a December baby. And like, no. What? Then why are you wearing it? It's supposed to be bad luck. And they're like, I never heard of it. Well, apparently my mom is the only one that's ever heard of it. I'm wondering if she's made it up. And when I went and researched it, I found out that bloodstones, which is also used to be the month of December. So apparently if you wear a December birthstone that is not your birthstone, apparently you're going to die. I don't know. But if you guys have ever heard that, let me know. But anyway, back on track. So this was done with hard solder. And probably how it was attached from here, along with probably this decorative wire that comes around to the top and makes little curlicues down in the bottom here, that was all probably put on with medium solder. And then next would come easy solder, because remember, if this is done in hard, and then it takes more heat than it would for the medium solder. So that way this solder job doesn't come undone, because this is a very teeny tiny project. You could heat up the whole thing to the same temperature extremely easily. So this was hard, the wire, and attaching this bezel would be medium, and then putting on these little dots, and those guys are super, super tiny. So the danger, and what makes this so difficult, with these little dots here, these little beads or grapes, sometimes I've heard them be called grapes, they could very easily end up melting, or it'll be a split second. I mean, like a fraction, 1/8, 1/16 of a second between when your easy solder melts and when these guys go to melt, because you're concentrating all that heat on that solder, which that solder might have been bumped up right up against them, which is where you want it. You want it right up against where it is that you're going to be soldering, or where you want it to flow to. You want it to flow underneath those guys, you got to have it touching. And by the time you concentrate that fire right there on that guy, these guys are getting hot too. And as soon as that solder goes, just disintegrates, these guys have moments before they just disintegrate and melt down too. And the same thing, that wire is very, very tiny. Very tiny. It would probably be just as easy to melt him down as it would with these guys, or at least melt part of it. So whoever made these, they had some skills. Why they would take the easy route and then just glue this bead in here when it already has a hole in it, and you could just thread the hole and make this guy come up, and then to avoid the whole potential or possibility for this bead to fall out. I don't know. With other people, you never know what they're thinking. Maybe they just, even though they managed to get it done and they had the skills to do it, they might have been just so frustrated with the whole project by that point in time, just, oh, fuck it, just glue the damn thing in there. Be done. So that could also be what happened. So, honestly, and I've done it too. Sometimes you just want to be done with something and you'll just take the shortcut. So, that's just a little video talking about doing repair works and some of the things you may end up seeing if you decide to make that a part of your business, or, repairing your own stuff or repairing a friend's stuff. I do typically look very hard and see how the piece was created in the first place, and this is very easy to reverse engineer, but at the same time, very classy, very beautiful piece. I just wish whoever it is that made it had taken the time to go ahead and run the wire through. So from here, now, fun. And this, this is just costume jewelry. Let me put these guys back where they belong. They go in a baggie. Well, actually, I can't put them in the baggie, but I'm going to put them, because that plastic, words, that glue has got a cure, so I'm going to just put them in their box that I was handed them in, and put the little baggie over there, so that way no cats can get a hold of them and start playing with them, and they're nice and safe in there, and they can still, or that one can still cure. Now, this is just a piece of costume jewelry. It's not that big of a deal. It's a pretty easy, well, I've never seen anybody, okay. So this is a bit more interesting than I thought it would be. Well, first thing I'm going to try to do how this was made, because there's no way you're threading all that underneath there. That's not going to happen. So what's happened is these pieces, these tongs, used to be standing straight up. And then somebody just came in with a square pliers and just crimped it down. So first off, let's see if they can even be brought back up. No. Nah, the fun of steel. Yeah, Sam. Well, this is going to be a lot more tricky. But anyway, this is the problem with the stretchy stuff, which I do have a little spool of it, because I do get requests to fix a lot of costume jewelry that's, you know, the stretchy thing. As you wear it, this gets full. This is a plastic. This gets full of the salts from your skin, and salt and plastic do not mix, obviously. And you can see this is probably, this might have been pure white at one point, and then you see the color. That's pretty gross. Or it could have been clear. And this, I mean, it does not matter what kind you use, how good of a grade of the stretchy stuff you use. This is going to happen. One way or another, it's going to happen. And as you sweat and the stuff comes in contact with your skin, there's no avoiding it. The only way to avoid it is to completely replace this stuff with like a braided steel wire with a nylon coating. And as long as that nylon coating stays safe, you won't have an allergic reaction if you have a nickel allergy. But then, obviously, you don't get the stretch with the nylon cord, or not nylon cord, with the steel cord like that. And then it'll just, you'll have to get a bunch of other stuff, like, you know, the lobster claws and such like that. So, yeah. Unless I can figure out how to lift those guys, this is probably about as far as this is ever going to get. Now this is going to take some muscle. Let's just turn you all inside out anyway. Or not. Whatever. Now this end is the end that's been soldered down. This end, which, unless it has, I don't think so, because otherwise what's the point of folding it over on top of this, because this isn't going to withstand fire. This top part is the end that got knocked over. Yeah, no. That just broke it. That's not gonna... Let's see if I can't figure out a way to... And this isn't steel, apparently. This is all made out of copper. The problem with that is you would think, well, then just reheat it and then they'll come up easier because they'll be softer. Only problem is heating it can mess up this outer coating. So we can't do that. It might be soldered down, and then somebody actually went through and threaded it. That's more effort than I would have ever imagined the company putting into it, because of how thick my stuff is. I don't think it'll work. Well, I'll find out. Excuse me. And especially keep in mind, with this kind of jewelry, they don't want you to be able to fix it. Now, I can get one of these guys to go through there all the way around. So it's just going to have to be a one and done. It won't be multiple strands like this. So, alright. This is kind of the fun part. Going through and ripping it all to pieces. And there's where one knot is. Alright, so it's just one big piece. Now just look at all that. And if the lady who has given me this is watching, this is not a knock on you or anything. It's just, this is just the way this kind of jewelry, when it's put together like this is just the way it ends up being. That's all there is to it. Alright. Oh. Forgot to put the cap back on. This is definitely one of those jobs where you wish you have nails. And just be careful while threading that you make everything point in the same direction. You don't want to accidentally inverse something. You have to unstring everything you did and put it all back together the correct way. Let's see. Ah. Little. There we go. Now when it comes to this kind of a thing, I want to leave myself enough tail to easily be able to tie it multiple times. But don't want to leave myself too much and waste a whole bunch either. Even this stuff costs money. Just a little pull and shorten that. Alright. Now I want this tie, you don't want the ties, or at least avoid tying things in between as much as possible, because in between does not have very much protection. That'd be enough. So you want to take a piece, don't put it all the way through one of them. I'm going to choose this smaller guy here because he's going to have a little bit more protection in a smaller area. And I'm just going to tie, and the first tie isn't as, or the first knot is not as much of a big deal as the next bunch. The next bunch, you are going to want to pull those suckers tight. And that's when you're taking some of the elasticity out of them, and then they won't be able to loosen themselves. A lot of the times when the knots keep coming undone, it's just because you just haven't pulled them tight enough when you knot them. And that elasticity is still there, and that allows it to still be able to wiggle free. And I will do multiple knots this way, making each knot tighter and tighter as I go. You can see I'm putting quite a lot of stretch into this. Now come in here. Let's see, that still gives it stretch this way to put back on, but it is not going to come undone. At least it shouldn't. And we'll just cut those guys back. we thread through the other side. Should you finish these guys off all the time in the same spot, like in the same short piece or the same long piece, wherever it is that you decided to tie off the first bunch, that is really up to you. I don't think there's a benefit between if I tie them both off in here or if I tie them both off in a different spot. And that just made everything come undone. All right, and through you go, come on. Which I am not going to worry about. So that's the end of this video, just kind of giving you an idea of some of the different kinds of repairs that you could be asked to do. A lot of them are pretty simple things that I've come across. And in general, when dealing with customers like this, very, very, very rarely do they want you to change up how things are done. They basically want it to go back exactly the way it was before. And with like zero changes to it. Where, like I said, if one, I had the tools and everything to do to redo this more correctly and making this more permanent, first thing I would do is ask, is it all right with you that I do this? And very, very often, the answer is always going to be no. Just put it back the way it was. I even had a lady one time come to me with a necklace, and it had like several fake turquoise stones that went around it, but she really liked it. It was just something fun, and I don't have a clue what the necklace looked like before. No, I didn't. All I had was those stones to go off of, and she had this, what mounts to pretty much like a choker wire, where it just latches in the back, and then it was just like that. And any idea that I came up with sounded like it was too much and too decorative, and she wanted it simple. She wanted it back the way it was before, but she had no pictures to show me. So I did a super simple design of attaching these stones along the piece with very minimal wire wrapping, plus a industrial glue, because again, I don't have the ability to solder or anything. And she was absolutely elated with it. And a lot of times when you run into people who bring you costume jewelry and things like that, or they bring, especially like an heirloom piece, they don't want you to risk possibly destroying it no matter what your skill set is. They just want it put back the way it was. Now, if it was the way it was, and like I mentioned, that would have been a better design, long-lasting design, where the wire would have gone through that hole and been actually suspending that guy in there along with glue, maybe I could possibly convince somebody because that was the way it was before. But yeah, when it comes to repair things, basically people just want it exactly the way it was before. So you're not going to be doing any inventive stuff. You're not going to be doing anything too creative. You're just going to be putting it back exactly the way it was before. And if it was put together shoddily in the first place, that's the way they want it put back. So just something to keep in mind when you're doing this kind of stuff. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with me. Please like, subscribe, comment, do all those wonderful things you do. I do have a Patreon if you feel like possibly helping. I don't even care if it's 10 cents you know, a month, or, you know, whatever you guys feel like you can donate. I'm more than grateful for it. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and thanks for coming and hanging out. Bye.